Welcome. Today we're talking about Mortal Kombat 2021 movie and why, as a fan from the franchise since 1992 when it first launched, I believe that this was not that good. And I'm going to compare it with the 1995 movie and then talk about why in particular this movie could have been better, but wasn't. And the 95 film outshines this in a couple of areas. It's not perfect, but I'll tell you why. If you're new to this channel, consider subscribing. I'm a nostalgic type of gamer where I talk about old games and then new games that come out that actually refresh the old. And in particular, Mortal Kombat is one of those games that has withstood the test of time from nostalgic to modern, but today we're going to switch it up a little bit by talking about a movie. Now, I've talked about movies before in this channel, but this particular movie, when it comes to this franchise, I'm very passionate about because I'm a huge fan of the original movie in 1995. I practically memorized it word for word. But when this movie came out, the 2021 version, I was super excited. And when I watched it, within I'd say the first 20 minutes, I was like, oh no. Oh no. I wanted it to be so much more. So let's dive right in. But before we do, I'm going to tell you right now, if you haven't seen 2021, not only do I encourage you to see it, but I want you to come back to this video after you've seen it because I want to talk about it with you guys together, having experienced that new movie. And I still support the franchise. I still want it to grow. And in fact, this line of movies, I would like for the story to continue. But there are a few changes that has to happen and we have to talk about it. So spoiler heavy, this entire conversation. We're going to talk after you've watched the movie and we'll go from there. All right, so let's start by breaking down particular areas in this new 2021 film and my opinion of it. Mostly going to start off negative, but then I'll tell you where this movie shined and kind of go from there. But unfortunately, there's a lot to review when it comes to this movie and what it kind of did wrong and why I'm not upset, but I'm just kind of like, ugh, it could have been better. We're going to start off with the intro to the movie, where you see Scorpion with his family, and for some weird reason, Sub-Zero comes to pretty much attack his family and kill everybody off, kill his family, and kill him off. And that reason of why he was doing it, at least in the beginning, wasn't really explored. It was just like, why is this happening? What's going on? And yeah, in a movie, you could kind of outline why something's going on. But in this movie, I don't think it did a really good job of doing that, of why is Sub-Zero attacking Scorpion. You might think he's doing that because Scorpion was chosen from Earthrealm to defend Earth in Mortal Kombat, and Sub-Zero was against Earthrealm, and that's why he wanted to kill Scorpion, but that introduces so many more problems. What's the point of Mortal Kombat if you could just kill them before the tournament? Why is Sub-Zero, which seems to be part of a ninja clan, part of Outworld? Why is he... What does that have to do with anything? Why is he joined forces with Outworld rather than Earthrealm? What is going on? What's his motivation? There's no character exploration for Sub-Zero at all. Granted, he's pretty cool in the movie and he has great fight scenes, but the explanation then to the backstory of Scorpion and Sub-Zero is so much deeper than that. And as a fan, you would know. But if you're not a fan, you're still wondering what the heck's going on. And they do a pretty poor explanation of why things happened here. So then the movie continues with exploring this new protagonist. Now the producers have said, okay, this new protagonist is created specifically for this movie because he's not in the games, so that it can help guide the person watching the movie, like what's going on, and ask the right questions. That would have worked if they wrote it that way, but he's not written in a way where you can get answers. You don't need a new character to do that. The original film proved that you can use established characters, such as Liu Kang in the first movie, kind of new stuff, but really didn't, and was still kind of exploring everything as new, and you cared about him and his development. Johnny Cage was the character who was asking questions like, what legends? What's going on and everything like that. You can drive it with established characters. This movie gave you a character who basically has no development. He just has a family, that's about it, and he's lineage of Scorpion. He's in Scorpion's lineage. So that in itself is like, okay, there's something special about him. You never really got enough character development. You never got to know the protagonist. It was just kind of like he barely had any good speaking lines. No disrespect to the actor. It's a disrespect to the director and the writers. Like, I never cared about this protagonist, Cole, I think his name was, throughout the entire movie, because it's like, A, I'm not familiar with you from the franchise, and B, I don't care. He could have been killed off. I don't care. And that's horrible, because usually in a movie when characters die, you want to care about them before they're slain. Even in cheesy horror flicks, they give you some development. They get you to recognize the character before they kill him off, so that you at least care a little bit. But if someone's just killing people off, you don't care. And in this movie, I didn't care if he survived and made it to Mortal Kombat. Now, as I mentioned before, Sub-Zero had zero character development. But another point that I want to bring up when it comes to like dialogue and whatever, even if the protagonist had dialogue, these writers were not giving this film any good dialogue.
Melina, let's finish this.
Now, from what I know, one of the writers in this movie, this was his first screenplay ever. And the other guy actually helped pen Wonder Woman 1984, so that's already starting off from a questionable beginning. Shang Tsung, for example, was a character who was basically given lines that were just, I'm the bad guy, I'm gonna do bad things and take over the world. Like, what? The original Shang Tsung from the 1995 movie has some of the most quotable lines in movie history. His lines, his delivery, how he cared, his facial expressions. I love that actor's facial expressions. It was just like, you really cared. Your brother's soul is mine. It has begun. Those are all from the original movie. I can't mention one quotable line from the new Shang Tsung besides, I brought my warriors, but next time I'll bring my army, or something like that, before Raiden was like, bye, go home. Like, what? Horrible. Now, this might be a little bit controversial, but I believe that Sonya and Jax knew a little bit too much. Sonya in the original movie and Jax really didn't know what was going on, and they were figuring it out too. There were special forces that would normally be after Kano. But in this movie, they're special forces, but they're after the legends, and they know all about it, and they did all this research, and she lives in a dump, and it's kind of like, but she knows like everything about everything, except where to find like Liu Kang and where they're supposed to go. And that disconnected me from the characters, because again, you're taking away the ability for new audiences to find out more about the story. You're just throwing it on them. And Sonya was just like...
Seems that throughout history, different cultures all over the world, they reference a great tournament. Look, my research shows that there's realms and species that we didn't even know existed. That dragon marking? It signifies that you've been chosen to fight for Earth.
Regurgitating this is this, this is this, this is this, we know this, and this is what's going on, 10 tournaments, and from a character that really is pulled away from the myths and the legends as much as, I guess, Raiden would be, or Liu Kang, or Kung Lao. It didn't seem like it was coming from the right characters, and the delivery was horrible. Liu Kang was horribly written as well. I know I'm going bad, but if you look at all of Liu Kang's dialogue and all of Liu Kang's interactions, he's just, I know everything, we gotta defend Earthrealm, that's it. And he was just dry and boring, and his delivery was horrible. And again, I just, you listen to the script and he just wasn't written well. The first one had Liu Kang caring about something, the death of his brother Chen. He cared about something, had motivation, he knew of the legends, but he had his own motivations, in particular to fight Shang Tsung. But he had to learn, he had growth. He had to grow to eventually care about Mortal Kombat, understanding the rules and going from there. This Liu Kang was like, I got my powers, I know the legends, we're gonna fight, that's it. He was like kind of a mentor, but not really. And when Kung Lao died, Kung Lao was a cool character from a martial arts perspective and had some wit, but at the same time, he was another character that I just didn't care about. When Kung Lao died and Liu Kang was like, my cousin, I didn't care. I'm like, oh well. In fact, it bothered me that Kung Lao was in this movie at all because part of me thinks he shouldn't have been in the original tournament, but then part of me is like, yeah, he should have been in the original tournament. So I'm kind of either way about that. But killing him off before the original tournament even started makes no sense. It's like, what are you doing with these characters? Although they did hint in this movie that death is just a way into another realm, I guess. It's not permanent. So I guess no death is permanent in this movie. Then Raiden himself, and I'm like going through the characters, but Raiden himself didn't care about it. I thought he was a bit of a douche. He knew a lot and he was just kind of writing his own rules. And that itself was what it was. And like I said, I didn't care about any of the fights. I didn't care who died. Except there's one fight I actually cared about, and that was Sonya versus Kano. Because I actually liked Kano. You wrote a movie so bad that the only character I cared about was Kano. And I bet you that actor, who was hilarious, probably ad-libbed a lot of the lines, which made his character a lot more compelling. He established his character. So the fact that he was able to sway from a possible script and kind of ad-lib most of it for his own self only made it even more confusing because he's like, okay, he's an antagonist that I care about, that I don't want dead, and then you kill him off. And the fight between Sonya and Kano, Sonya should have hated Kano and wanted him dead from the beginning because Kano killed her partner. Because in the original movie, that's why she wanted Kano. In this movie, it was just kind of like, oh, I found this guy and, you know, we're after them and whatever. But she barely cared. And it wasn't until the end that they gave that any relevance. So I thought that was very poorly written. And the fact that they killed one of the best characters in the movie was like, come on. But it's an antagonist. So they ruined that too. So next, we're moving on to Goro. Goro from the 1995 movie looked amazing. Goro was like, I knew it was animatronics when I first saw it, and I thought he just looked compelling. His lines in the movie were great in the original movie. And he had a lot of speaking parts, and you can tell he was intimidating. They wrote his character to beat up a bunch of guys, even though they couldn't do much with these animatronics. So they just threw a bunch of guys on the floor, and they were like, Goro beat them. So Goro was written in the original movie to be a threatening menace. So by the time Johnny Cage fought him, you were like, how the heck is Johnny Cage going to beat Goro? Like, you really didn't know. And yeah, the fight was a bit cheesy, but at least they established Goro as a threat. In this movie, Goro was unveiled with like a shadow at first, but then when you saw him fight Cole, first of all, I didn't care if Cole died and Goro beat him. In fact, I thought it would have been done more for Goro's character for intimidation if he would have killed Cole. I thought that would have been written cleverly if, after all that development with Cole, they just killed him off so that the other fighters can care more. That would have made sense to me. In fact, I was rooting for Goro. It would have made so much more sense if he would have killed, because you establish that Goro's intimidating, you get rid of the useless character, and you make it about the franchise established characters without actually having to kill any of them off. Totally makes sense to kill Cole. But no, Cole gets a power of like being able to get his ass kicked and use that to his advantage, and then he kills Goro before the tournament. That makes no sense. Let's say they do bring back the characters for the movie because they're like, okay, death isn't permanent, and they bring all the characters back. All the people who died got their asses kicked. So how are they any threat? Goro was beaten. Just make him fight Cole again, and Cole kill him again. Like, the hell sense does that make? It doesn't. And that's why I think they completely neutered Goro in this movie. And I wasn't a fan of the CGI. I know most people were, but I wasn't a fan of the CGI. Though you could do a lot more with that character because it's fully based CGI. I watched it on my big 65-inch 4K television, and I was like, yeah, he doesn't look that great. But, you know, a lot of people said the special effects were awesome. I, in particular, wasn't a fan, so take that for what it's worth. Now, getting back to Scorpion. I'm just going to say this right away. Scorpion, great character. What a waste of a character in this movie. He was in the beginning. He got his spear. You don't see him throughout the movie except little flashbacks. Then he has a pretty cool fight with Sub-Zero at the end. But it was like, what's the point? Okay, fine, you get him for a cool fight with Sub-Zero, but like he had no development. It's like, why should I care? And then he steals the fight from the main character, Cole, in the movie. So you're really taking it away from Cole too after he beat Goro. And then you just have that fight just to have fights. And that's kind of one of the things about these fights that I wanted to mention too, and that I did mention, is that in a movie about Mortal Kombat where you care about the fights, you care about the tournament as well because it has an effect on the outcome. But because Shang Tsung basically said death is just another passageway, none of the fights really meant anything except the fighting. And even though it looked cool, having great looking fights and fatalities don't make a good movie. They don't. If I don't care about the fights and I don't care who wins, then it doesn't make a good movie. I'm not invested. And that's where my problem is. I wasn't invested as much as I should have been. And if you're not a fan of the franchise, but you watch this for your first time and you might not know about fatalities, it's almost pointless. Like, why are they going out of their way to show blood and violence? So sure, I guess that's Mortal Kombat. Nothing more to the franchise than blood and whatever, right? Because that's generally, it's the whole point is fatalities. Well, then you don't have a good, compelling story that will bring in new fans of the franchise. And that's a problem with that. So wrapping up, let me bring to you, like, if you can get past all the other things that I mentioned, my one biggest problem with this movie and this story and the way they carried it was one simple line from the 95 movie. There was a point in the 95 movie where Scorpion and Sub-Zero were about to attack Sonya, Liu Kang, and Johnny Cage. And Shang Tsung came out and he's like, Scorpion and Sub-Zero, deadliest of enemies, but slaves under my power. Yes, I had a problem with the fact that they were slaves under his power, but they were trying, I guess, quicken the movie and diving into that rivalry might have been too much for that movie, which was my problem with the 95 movie, but go past that. Right when Outworld was going to attack Earthrealm people, that's when you see Raiden say, enough. Your sideshow freaks attack my fighters. That is expressly forbidden before the tournament. As your Emperor One knows. Then it's like, okay, the rules are you can't attack until the tournament. So it gives a point to the tournament. It's like, okay, the tournament must happen. They have rules. You can't go out and kill us until the tournament begins. This movie had no rules. Outworld could have taken over Earthrealm anytime it wanted. They were already trying to fight and kill each other and fighting. So it's like, why are you just going to put pause? Let's have a tournament. Like, there's no point to the tournament. So it was just kind of like sloppily written, like, everyone could kill everyone. Like, what's the point? There needs to be some order, because if not, there's no reason why Outworld wouldn't have just begun its invasion and taken over Earthrealm. No point to that whatsoever. So then later when Shang Tsung's like, I'm bringing my armies, and Raiden's like, oh, get out of here. And it just banishes him away. What the heck was the point to that? And now Raiden's like, you gotta find more fighters. Why? Like, if it's a constant war, then it's not a tournament. Then it's just a war. Then just call it Mortal War and not Mortal Kombat, because the tournament, there's no point to a tournament that you're leading up to. And that's the biggest plot hole, is just that there's no reason to fight in this movie besides it's really a battle. So instead of martial arts, if all these fighters come and you just bring your guns and shoot them all, kill them all, then what's the point? And that's the unfortunate part. They completely neutered the rules, and that's my biggest problem with the movie. You have to have a reason to fight. You have to have a reason to care. And this movie didn't give us that. Oh yeah, and no Johnny Cage in this movie. Horrible. So, alright, I've mentioned a lot of bad things, but I'm going to end this off with the good things that this movie did. The fights, the CGI, and the fatalities all were good. They were all good. But those three good things don't make a good movie. And that's why I believe that not only is the 95 movie better, but I also believe that the Mortal Kombat Legacy series that came out on YouTube, thanks to Machinima, was much better. And that was actually the inspiration to relaunch a Mortal Kombat like movie franchise. But the Machinima episodes of Mortal Kombat Legacy did something that actually this movie franchise probably should have done. And that was explore each character independently in their own little mini film. You could have done like, and I've heard other YouTubers mention this, and I think it's a great idea. You could have done movies based on each of the characters because their lore is so deep. Have a movie with Jax and Sonya trying to get Kano, like a mercenaries movie. Have a movie that just focuses on the rivalry between the Lin Kuei and the Shiryu and have that explored. You know, have so many different side stories, and then it all comes together in an Avengers-like movie called Mortal Kombat, and bring all those characters that you've developed and that we care about. So now that they're all coming together, you know the backstory of all of them, and you could have made a lot of money, Warner Brothers, if you did it that way, and you'd have a lot more people that actually care about this franchise. But instead, you rushed it in one movie. You didn't. This was kind of the worst of the two. Annihilation, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, was the absolute worst movie I've ever seen. But the first one, Mortal Kombat 1995, still outshines this version. So that again, that's just my opinion. That's all I gotta say. I think I've dogged on this movie quite enough, and this video's kind of going on for a while. But let me know what you guys think of the new Mortal Kombat 2021 movie. I still want it to be successful, but hopefully they replace or change the writers, or these writers actually realize what they messed up and fix all these problems, because quite honestly, it's not starting off where it should have, and I super appreciate the franchise of its potential. So we'll see where it goes from there. But as always, thank you, and you can make my day if you subscribe today. This is Magnus, and I'm out. See you guys later. Oh, and the music was so much better in '95. What happened to this movie?